Welcome back to Pathfinders podcast, where we dive into the career journeys of great people with exciting paths. Our conversation is going to align with the Pathfinders methodology and hit on some of the career maps of our guests, a representation of their professional journeys, past, present, and a little bit of the future. We break this out into roles, skills, accomplishments, education, and some of the fun stuff as well. We're also going to touch on some of those mentors, multiple mentors that help to guide the success and the path along the way as well. We call this a personal board of advisors, and you might hear me reference a PBA. We'll share these on LinkedIn and the podcast platform, so be sure to follow as you listen along and, share some of the comments and takeaways. The quote for today from our guest is, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that thanks to Ralph Waldo Emerson. Today, we'll hear from Dr. Victoria Mattingly. Many of you may know her as Dr. V. She's awesome. She's also the CEO of Mattingly Solutions, a women-owned consulting firm that uses data and science to improve the human experience at work. Professional speaker, adjunct professor, DEI practitioner, and co-author of the globally acclaimed and, yes, award-winning book, Inclusiolytics, How DEI Leaders Use Data to Drive Their Work. Dr. V helps her clients take a more data-driven approach to their DEI efforts by helping them better measure and track DEI outcomes, diversity, equity, inclusion. She earned her PhD in organizational psychology, specializing in inclusive behaviors and workplace allyship. One fun fact before we bring her on the stage is that she was somebody who sang the national anthem at a sporting event. So without further ado, V, come on up and share a little bit more about your journey, and maybe start off with hold on a second, that's a heck of a fun fact.
It was always a dream of mine to sing the national anthem for a professional sporting event. And I got to do so. It was before the pandemic, so it must have been the summer of 2019. And it was at a Riverhounds game here in Pittsburgh, which is our professional football, soccer team.
Football, soccer, it trades.
Yeah. But one of these days, I want to get in with the Pirates. PNC Park is always one of the highest rated, beautiful parks in the world, baseball stadiums in the world. So it'd be great to sing there.
All right. Whoever's listening, 2.5 minutes into the show so far, let us know who you know at the Pittsburgh Pirates and PNC Park that might be able to make this dream become a reality. It's probably on your career map in some capacity. If it's not yet, I hope it gets over there soon. But that's what this is all about, is bringing people together and talking about some of those dreams you have now. V, whenever you were growing up, what did you want to be?
So I always wanted to be a psychologist, and I thought I was going to be a psychologist to the stars. So I had an uncle that lived in Southern California, so I wanted to move out there to be closer to him and work in Hollywood and be a shrink to the stars. I'm not a clinical counseling psychologist, but I am an organizational psychologist, so I did stay true to that. And I don't know if I've had any super famous clients to date, but maybe if I can pull off a movie star client at some point, then essentially I met my dream.
Okay, so we're going to make a couple of different dreams come to fruition here. What if, while we're at the Pirates, you sing, and then you can work with, maybe some of the athletes? I have some ideas here. Okay, so psychology. You mentioned that you have a couple of degrees. Where'd you go to school? What'd you study? And do you use any of those things? I think I know the answer, but talk us through that.
Yeah. So I have a lot of pride coming from Woodland Hills School District for my K through 12 education. And we were one of the last school districts to be desegregated across multiple communities. And so I had a very diverse and inclusive, education from that K to 12. And so I'm really passionate about public school and, having diversity in, public school education to this day. Then I went to Pitt for my undergrad. So I double majored in psychology and communications. I absolutely use both of those all the time. Psychology in the work that I do and the book that I wrote and the diversity, equity, inclusion practice that I've built, but also the communications in just being a better consultant, being a better businesswoman, I love marketing. And I think that's a huge part of it because essentially just communicating out to the world of what you do and the problems that you solve. So I definitely use both of my undergrad degrees. And then I got my master's and PhD from Colorado State University in the field of industrial organizational psychology, which is essentially using data science to make life better for humans in the workplace. So studying a lot of the same concepts that you might study in business school or organizational development or something like that, but with a really strong human focus. And I pride myself in being an organizational psychologist and taking that approach and that lens to my work as a DEI practitioner.
And I think you do a fantastic job. And for everybody else, I've known V for a couple of years now on a professional setting, and she's a great friend. And it's really cool to be able to say, hey, what you get in this sort of a setting is what you get whenever the camera's not rolling, whenever you're not at a networking event or some kind of a professional setting like that. And I have to, give you some kudos to that. Not everybody's able to be who they really are and their true authentic self and genuine through and through. So V, one of the many things that I admire about you. And once you finished up school, where did you take your talents? And then maybe we'll get into some of the singing talents along the way as well, but professional talents as a starting piece.
So the first job that I had after, and I do want to call out, I did take 4 years off in between undergrad and grad school. So there's certainly, other paths where it doesn't require you to go right from undergrad to grad school. So I did have some jobs in between there, internships. I worked a variety of professional jobs as well as service industry jobs. I was a server and a bartender for many years. And I feel like that really gave me a whole other skill set that I feel like people who don't work in that industry don't necessarily get for themselves, which is to be really customer focused, being really kind. And like, that's part of the work. It's part of, the expectation. And also not letting that burn you out is a huge aspect too. So learning how to work a hard job with not letting it get to you at the end of the day. That was a really great skill I got from my service industry years. But my first job out of grad school was at Amazon. I worked on their talent assessment team, and that team was responsible for hiring at mass, hiring at scale, right? So Amazon's hiring, hundreds, thousands of software developers every single month, every single year, right? And so how do you ethically and validly hire that many people at the same time? And then also, how do you make sure that the experience, those who are going through that hiring process, those candidates, that they're having a positive experience, even if we don't end up hiring them, because, Susie's going to go back to MIT and tell all her friends, Amazon doesn't know how to treat people whenever you come on site and do a job interview, right? They need to make sure that even if Susie doesn't get hired, that she still has a positive experience to tell her friends back home. So I loved working at Amazon. I know Amazon has its shortcomings when it comes to employee experience, and there's, things about toxicity that goes on there, but I think it's really dependent any job, who your team is. And I had a really amazing team. They all were fellow organizational psychologists, so people that really, took that work-life balance, work-life integration seriously. We played ping pong every Friday downstairs, have fun. And I love working at fast-paced tech environment. I love building things that were going to live beyond my time there. And it was an internship, and I even got a job offer at the end of it. And that was one of my biggest, my first big crossroads in my career, where I absolutely depended on my PBA to help me get through that experience, because I had, as a grad student, my dissertation was left to finish, right? So I'm not quite done, but I had a 6-figure job offer in one hand at a awesome company that I loved working at. And I had a second internship that I had to complete and do good on at a far smaller company. People don't really know about it if they don't live in Pittsburgh. And what should I do? Right. And I felt it was such a difficult decision. And I remember being on lots of calls with my PhD advisor, other professors, people who've known me my whole life and can hey, how can I make sure I'm doing good by 18-year-old Victoria here, make the right decision, right? And I remember my PhD advisor told me, he's like, you're not gonna like hearing this, but I'm gonna tell you right now, whether you choose path A or path B, you're going to end up in the same place regardless. And it's going to be a great place, because you'll make the best out of either of those paths. And I'm like, but that doesn't help me right now. That doesn't help me make the decision. And what I ended up doing was turning down that 6-figure job offer for the other internship because they were willing to help me finish my dissertation. So I worked with them. I built a training program for men to be better allies to women in the workplace. It ended up being a commercial product for this organization that they still sell to this day. And it was the basis of my dissertation. And I had a client, I had a control and an experimental group, and I was able to graduate. And so I really made that decision aligned with what my bigger values and goals were, which was getting my PhD, getting done with school, and doing really meaningful and purposeful work, which I was able to do at that other company.
Can you share what that other company was?
Sure. Yeah, they're great. DDI, they're Development Dimensions International. They're based here in Pittsburgh, but they are a global leadership development consulting firm. They have a lot of psychologists on staff too. So shout out to all my DDIers out there.
Yeah, past, present, and future. As you were going through that journey, what were some of the other questions that you might have asked? Hey, should I take option A, option B? Anything else that really helped you say, okay, the money's nice, but here's what comes with the money. Did the geography go into it? Did the work-life balance go into it? Hey, who knows? Maybe Amazon's going to require everybody to go back into the office 5 days a week starting January 2nd or something, right? All of these different aspects of things.
So I think I mentioned this. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, and I left for 10 years between undergrad and then grad school and all that. And 22-year-old me inside of me was not very happy to be back in Pittsburgh. So I did not stay for the Pittsburgh location. It actually took a few years for me to really learn to fall back in love with this city. And current me is very happy here. I love Pittsburgh. I love how many people are moving here. I get a kick out of that. It was not the case growing up here. And at the time I really loved Seattle. I would have been happy to go back to Seattle. So it wasn't the location. The money made it hard, right? But ultimately, I didn't just decide on the money because I turned down the job offer. It really was which place is going to lead to my greatest happiness. And my greatest happiness at that time would have been finishing my PhD, finishing my degree, doing what's best for my family. Like my husband had just found a job at that point, and I really didn't want to take a step and move again back to the West Coast. I knew we could be happy here, and there later on in my career, I was at a different job where I was just really unhappy, and I remember I was walking to meet a friend for coffee, and I got a glimpse of myself in the window of the store I was walking by. And I didn't recognize myself because I looked so unhappy, and I was allowing this job to just snuff my light out. I have a lot to give. I have a lot in me. I have my education. I have my experiences. I have my passion. I have my ambitions and my goals. I have a lot of light in me, and I was letting this job just snuff it right on out. And so thinking about where can I be that my light will shine the brightest, I think is most important, compass for where I go next in my career.
And so from DDI, let's talk about some of the skills you developed and utilized from PhD to Amazon to DDI. And as you built those into your next role, what did you use and where did you go next?
I learned so much from DDI. I learned about how working in a broader organization, it's a system. And you need to understand how that system operates, how communication flows, who has influence, who doesn't, how to get things accomplished, who you need to get on your team, who you shouldn't have on your team, right? I learned so much while I was there. And I got to also work with a lot of really great senior leaders as well. I got to work with the CEO, which was phenomenal. And she's a woman, and there just aren't very many women CEOs in the world. And the fact I got to work directly with one was amazing. And seeing, how senior leaders operate and communicate, that was really important for me. I'm going to skip over to my current job, which is running my own company. I am a CEO now. A friend. Thank you. I remember a friend of mine gave me a little dish that said like, girls just want to be CEO. And it was, many years ago. And I still have that because I'm like, I am one now. Like I did it. Right. So, and so I wouldn't have gained those skill set of what executive presence is, understanding how organizational dynamics work if it wasn't for my time at DDI and then at my next and final job before I started my company at a company called Mind Gym. I did learn the hard way at Mind Gym how to be an effective remote employee. That was a struggle. And this was 2018, 2019, so before the pandemic. And I was the only remote person on a team that was fully based in New York City. And so I had to learn how to advocate for myself. I didn't do it in time. I ended up burning out as a result. I felt like I'm a medical doctor telling my patients not to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. I'm the organizational psychologist helping people not burn out. And then I burn out on the job, right? So taking care of yourself and advocating for yourself, that's a lesson I learned too late. And it's a lesson that I try to still integrate to this day and coach my clients on how to do that as well.
V, tell us a little bit more about what you do today at Mattingly Solutions.
Absolutely. So we are a workplace inclusion consulting firm. So Pete had mentioned about my book, Inclusalytics, using DEI data to drive DEI work. So really trying to integrate that organizational psychology background into the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. So I work with mostly corporations. I have worked with some educational institutions and nonprofits, but mostly corporations, and helping them take a more data-driven approach to their DEI efforts. So how are they measuring DEI? How are they building strategies that are founded in data, rooted in data? How are they tracking progress to see how they go? How are they establishing future goals based on the data insights that they gain? So a lot of hands-on consulting, a lot of measurement work, some training, not as much training, but more working directly with these DEI leaders and sometimes serving as this broker between the DEI function and other parts of the organization, like the people analytics or the HR analytics team, because they're the ones that can pull all the data, but they don't know what data is going to be most helpful or relevant to the DEI folk. The DEI folk aren't necessarily asking the right questions or thinking that they need to become data experts, which they don't. They just need to build that partnership. And so I'm that broker between the DEI function and other parts of the org.
And whenever she says she's done it with corporations, we're not talking small companies, small, medium, large, but again, kudos to V on some of those clients and success stories along the way. Hey, V, real quick, you have 3 letters in there, and we know that not all entities recognize all 3 letters anymore. Why do you keep emphasizing DEI altogether?
Yeah, it's so interesting because like most fields just have their name and you call them what they are. And for some reason, my field, we just never can agree on what we should call ourselves. I've been using the moniker DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, since I started the company over 5 years ago. And as Pete shared, some institutions have specifically removed the equity part and calling it I and D instead of, DEI. And the equity part is just so critical because that's where the work lies. So especially thinking from a data perspective. So I want to go in and look at, are we seeing systemic differences between how groups are being promoted, hired, selected for, say professional development opportunities, selected for various teams, and if we see systemic differences, and by that I mean we have more men being hired than women, we have more white people being hired than people of color, we have more people who identify as heterosexual than those who identify as LGBTQ. There needs to be something done to fix that inequity. There needs to be something to balance that out, right? Because the goal isn't to turn what looks like this, and for those just listening, I have my hands not on the same playing field, but to make it balanced. It's not to flip those hands, so this one that was higher is now lower. It's to make the two hands be at that same level, that we're seeing the same rate of women, of people of color, of people from various backgrounds getting hired, getting selected, getting promoted at those same rates. And when we take that equity work out, that looking for those differences, identifying those gaps, actively working to close those gaps, and we're only left with the diversity and the inclusion piece, well, first off, you're not going to get more diversity. So like the diversity piece is going to start withering on the vine, right? And also inclusion alone, that's just, making sure we all feel valued, respected, seen, and heard, which is great, but it's not solving problems related to subgroup differences. And so the equity piece is just so pivotal. So I plan on keeping the E in my DE and I, calling it DE and I as long as I can until it's becomes, nonsensical, and then I'll call it the next thing. And I say this all the time too, especially to my clients. If we need to rebrand it, if we need to use different words and call it engagement and engagement and culture, or call it, people operations, or like whatever we need to call it, it's fine. As long as the work is getting done, that we're building fair systems that results in a representative end rule of whoever, whatever we're doing, whether we're hiring, promoting, selecting, whatnot. That's what really matters, not what we call it.
I think that's really, really important. And it's clear that you know your stuff inside and out, so much so that you're able to guide others. Are there a couple of folks on your personal board of advisors, V, that you'd like to give a shout out to? You've gone through a couple of different chapters along the way, but sometimes it's nice, right? One of the big pieces of the Pathfinders methodology is that attitude of gratitude. So if there's a few folks that, maybe they're on the board today, maybe they're on your bench, or, they've kind of retired from your board, but just an opportunity to say, hey, thanks to so-and-so for this and this.
Yeah, so I already mentioned him once, but Dr. Kirk Krager, my PhD advisor, he's continued to be such an amazing mentor to me. And one of the best compliments I'd ever received was the day where he said, the mentee has now become the mentor, right? And so how we now, talk to each other more as peers, and he'll ask me for advice sometimes. And that's just the ultimate compliment, especially because he's a really big deal in my field too. If you're an IO psychologist, Kirk Krager. And then Suzanne DeJanish. And so Suzanne is wonderful, even though I just butchered her last name. I met her at a conference, and it was a smaller conference, and we had a talent show, which is just like so cool. At a talent show at a conference, and she gets up and starts singing this most beautiful song. And I look at a friend of mine. Oh, and she was also just being awesome in the sessions earlier that day. So she already kind of caught my eye and had And you better believe that I did. She didn't know it, but I reeled her in, and now she's actually a good friend of mine, but she just put together a call for a recurring call for women entrepreneurs, women solopreneurs. And so now, she's still doing these amazing mentoring things in my life, even though she's definitely more of a friend than anything now. And then my third mentor, I want to call out Mel Smith. He's been mentoring me just for the last year or so. He is a DEI leader, and he was on my board of advisors, my business's board of advisors. And even though I have, that's, getting restructured, he stayed on as my personal mentor. And it's just so phenomenal to talk with someone who understands my business, understands where I'm at, empowers me, encourages me, supports the work that I do, provides an extra set of eyes, hey, that thing's amazing, send it out, or, oh, tweak this thing and before you put it out there. So Mel is really great too. So those would be the three. I've had so many more over the years. I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for my mentors or my PBA, but those would be the three that are top of mind today.
I want to give a shout out to another name that's on your book back there, and a name that's also in my book, Allison up in New York City. So thanks, Allison, for guiding both of us in multiple different capacities. Another Pittsburgh native. Well, maybe we'll get her on the show at some point. That'd be a lot of fun. So V, you mentioned some of the methodology. You mentioned the word path a few times, so very well done, either pun intended or not. But tell us a little bit more about how this idea of putting together a career map, having this concept of somebody just mentioned it as a dream team, but this support structure of not just one individual. How do you see the value in that concept? And do you think this might have been able to help you or earlier career professionals as well?
I feel like some of the best mentors and advisors that I've had have been really good at asking good questions. So not people to just point the direction that I'm going in, but to help me figure out, what decision is going to be most aligned with my goals and values and overall happiness, and asking me questions to help me get to the bottom of that answer. I do wish earlier in life, especially, my late high school years, that I had more mentoring support. I was a first generation college student, and so applying for colleges and going SATs and all that. If I would have had someone to kind of guide me along the way, someone that had went to college recently. And that's the thing too. I think sometimes we think of mentors, they need to be like, these like old people with all this like wisdom and experience. And that's great. Wisdom and experience is awesome. But sometimes just having someone who just went through the thing that you're about to go through can be so advantageous. I actually started a mentoring program when I was in grad school, and it was for undergrads who wanted to go to grad school. And it was the grad students that were their mentors. And as first year grad students, you have the worst imposter syndrome. You feel like, no, I don't belong here. They got it wrong. I'm going to fail. Right. And to be told, actually, you're the most qualified person to serve as a mentor for this program because you just went through the grad school application process, right? And it was so empowering. And so I just want to encourage those to think about not just who has the most experience and wisdom, but who just most recently succeeded at the thing that you are currently trying to accomplish. So I wish I had someone when I was applying to college. It's all good. It all worked out, but that would have been really wonderful. But yeah, as I said, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it hasn't been the help and guidance and just support from my mentors and advisors.
So I pulled up one of my bookmarks here, and you're talking about some of the roles of maybe it's a buddy, right? Almost that peer-to-peer person. Maybe it's the functional mentor, the cross-functional mentor. They don't have to be some of those white hair whizzes or gray hair gurus that have much more seasoned experiences than us. So cool shout out there. Hey V, are you ready to go into the quick fire questions?
Yes, lay it on me.
All right. So a book that you recommend most, or that you is always at the top of your reading list?
Inclusalytics. It's a shameless self-plug, but if anyone cares about DEI and data, this is the book to read. And you mentioned Allison before, she was a third author on our book, and she's the one that really made it very readable and like conversational. And so even if you're just curious about these concepts, I can't recommend.
And over 20,000 copies sold at the weeks, maybe a couple months before the recording of this. So definitely go grab a copy of the book. V, best professional advice you ever received and or maybe delivered?
Go to where your light's going to shine the brightest. It's not always the most highest paying job. It's not always the sexiest job or the fanciest job or the company name that everyone knows. Where are you going to shine? Where is your potential, your passion, just your goals? Like, where are you going to be able to succeed? And that's where you should be, not where society or others tell you where to go.
Is there something that you do that's your happy place or a stress relief activity or spot?
Karaoke. I'll even do solo karaoke. I'll just go out somewhere and find karaoke on a rough day and then just do the karaoke.
What kind of songs? Actually, are there certain songs, if it's a bad day, I'm going to be singing this or this kind of a genre? If I'm feeling myself, I'm feeling good, it's going to be this kind of music? Or is there any method to the madness?
When I'm in my feels, it's Billie Eilish's Happier Than Ever. And when I'm trying to start a dance party, it's Aretha Franklin's Respect.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I like it. We will have to be on the watch around Pittsburgh for Dr. V up on the stage. V, as we're closing up here, any final kind of words of wisdom or a thought that you'd like to share with our listeners in the community here?
When it comes to finding your mentors, your board of advisors, first just ask. Don't be, nervous about just asking. I've rarely had someone say no. And in times where they do say no, I'm kind of relieved. It's like, thank you for just telling me so I don't waste your time if you're super busy and can't take on a mentee right now. And then once that relationship does begin, like really listen to what they say and, really apply, not obviously if they're a good mentor, they're not going to tell you what to do, right? They're going to ask you good questions. They're going to help guide you and, give them something between that call and the next call to say, hey, I tried that thing. I did that thing. And here's what I learned. And here's what I experienced. And I hated it, but I learned all these things about myself or whatever it is, right? Like really just go all in because you're going to have to challenge yourself to grow. And a good mentor, their role is to help you grow.
Help you grow and help you shine and find the best place for you to do it. V, thanks so much for your time. Everybody that's listening, please, if you're on LinkedIn, follow Dr. Victoria Mattingly, add a comment on this post of one thing that you're kind of like, oh yeah, that was an aha moment for me. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick recap from some of the high level pieces that I jotted down along the way. So Dr. V, our singer, songwriter, and shrink to the stars, was a psychologist, dreamer, and took it to reality. I psychology in Colorado with a big emphasis on the human side of things. And we don't want to sleep on those server sabbatical years between then and Amazon, where you worked with the talent assessment team and then turned them down to then work with a local Pittsburgh group and helping men being better allies in the workplace. And that was just internship number 2. It seems like you've done so much, but we're glad that you came back to the Berg and DDI helped you flourish in so many ways. Learning the hard way how to be an effective remote employee helped build you and grow into what you're doing with Mattingly Solutions today, knowing, thanks for the reminder, that burnout is real and those hypocritical instances are out there and can even drive us at all levels of the food chain. Really appreciate the data-driven decision-making for those DEI leaders. Please get a copy of Inclusiolytics. V, you're always supporting people analytics teams, HR. And the cool part is what you've taught me is that this drives overall business growth. You're building systems, building fair systems that result in a representative manner So everybody has a shot at this. Cool shout outs to those great mentors that ask awesome questions along the way. So V, keep on singing, keep on shining so that people can be their best selves.